Hi everyone, welcome to Cozy Shenanigans, where we talk cozy mysteries and hobbies. My name is Sheena. Well, it was touch and go for a while if there even would be an episode 2. I really thought about quitting, but I do enjoy making videos and talking about this stuff, even if nobody watches. So if you enjoy it too, then please like or leave a comment, share, interact with this video somehow, because it really helps me find viewers. It also lets me know that what I'm doing is appreciated and that I am not creating in a vacuum. So, this episode, I'm looking at the first two Ainsley McGregor movies and the first book, as well as the Irish TV series Harry Wild. In between, I'll be vlogging about an old knitting fail that I am rectifying or have rectified. So let's hop on over and I will let past Sheena tell you all about the current knitting project. Okay. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, June 18th, and I have a project vlog for you. If you're new here, my name is Sheena and I'm a knitter, and today I'm going to remake one of my older projects. So I have this vest that I made, I think 2 years ago, and I've worn it a grand total of once. I've never been happy with it. I'll insert some pictures to show you what I'm talking about, but this was meant to use up some leftovers, so the length isn't what I want. The hem does something weird, which I don't even understand why it's doing it, because the hem didn't ripple when I picked up stitches, or not the hem, but the sides didn't ripple when I picked up stitches, so it should be the correct number of stitches picked up, but it's like forcing the hem down into a weird point. And then the neckline is off, and all of this is because I was running out of yarn. I was trying to use up that light blue, and it wasn't working. So I've already started taking things apart. Let me back up, and past Sheena will show you what it looked like before. Okay, so this is what the vest looks like. And the main thing I want to fix is the way that it points down right here. And I'll insert pictures of me wearing this vest so you can see why I don't like it. Now, part of the problem with this vest is that it was made to use up leftovers, specifically the leftovers of this Barocco vintage. So I used up everything that I had on here. I've got a couple little odd bits left, but they are currently worked into another project. I can sacrifice them if I really need to, but that requires undoing the entire project to get them, and it's not really enough to make that much of a difference. So I do have more of this, which is Knit Picks Comfy Worsted. I've got at least 5 more balls of this, not counting those two. So what I can do is I can work more of this blue into the stripes and do some kind of like color work effect. I'm not super keen on that. What I'm thinking I might do right now is I am a Knit Picks affiliate. I will have a credit at the end of this month. So I might just get another skein of this yarn. The problem is that this yarn has been in my stash for 15 years. I'm not entirely certain of the colorway. I'm reasonably sure I know which color it was. I'm reasonably sure that it is still produced and that it is in stock on the Knit Picks website. However, there is absolutely no way the dye lot is going to match. So if I want to add in another skein, at the very least I have to alternate skeins, and I might even have to work in some of that just to hide the color shift, because I don't know how drastic it's going to be. I've already taken off the contrast edging that went around here, and I'm going to start undoing the button band. The button band is the biggest problem with this, but if I hadn't added a button band, I wouldn't have had enough yarn to finish this at all. Or if I did, I would have had to start the ribbing up here, which I really don't like. And anyway, so I'm going to take this apart. Right now, I think my best option is going to be to make this section of the shoulder a little bit narrower because I do have very narrow shoulders. And then we'll go from there. We'll see. And I think this was done from the bottom up, but I won't know for certain until after I undo this ribbing right here and find my woven ends. So we'll see. So here is where I'm at right now, not very far. The original was made from the bottom up. I've always had problems with bottom up sweaters and vests, so I'm switching to top down. And I just have the start of the straps, and I'm gonna do the thing where you make the strap longer than it needs to be, and then you pick up on the back of it and knit down for the back. So I've just got a little bit on the straps right here, and we're going from here. So let's look at the Ainsley McGregor mysteries. I've only read the first book, and my verdict, the movies are better. I know, sacrilege, but let me explain. So in this series, Ainsley is a relatively new transplant to Sweet River, Texas, but she's hardly a stranger. Sweet River is where her grandmother lived, where her brother is sheriff. In the book, Ainsley inherits her grandmother's house, but it's unclear if that's the case in the movies. So now that she has settled into her new home, she's opening her own business. Bless Your Arts is a year-round craft market slash gallery with jewelry, woodworking, yarn, and of course, a local winery. Now, Ainsley has some very involved conversations with her dog, George Clooney, which the TV series has peppered in with some really great Southern sayings like, "I've had so much coffee, I could thread a sewing machine while it was still running." George is about as useful as a guard dog as Ainsley's brother, who is Greg or Ryan, depending on which one you're viewing. He's about as useful as her brother is as sheriff. He mostly brings in the cavalry at the end and refuses to tell Ainsley about the case, as any good policeman should. Brother notwithstanding, though, Ainsley has plenty of help in her corner. The vendors at Bless Your Arts have a book club which very seldom discusses books. Mostly it's a bunch of local busybodies with too much gossip and curiosity on their hands. And having also seen the Aurora Tea Garden series, it's giving Real Murders Club, but a little bit less macabre and organized. The books are written by Candace Havens, and a quick Google shows that she is mostly known for steamy romance, a biography of Joss Whedon, and high-volume book production. She sells a class that promises to get the first draft of your book in only 2 weeks. As someone who has written 13 books, I'm not sure how that's even possible if you have any kind of commitments outside of writing, but I know that there are some authors who do it, so more power to her. But that's neither here nor there. Either way, I can't say the course sounds like a good idea, since my first problem with the book series, at least the first book, was I don't feel like it was well edited. There was a lot of really awkward phrasing that felt unnatural to me, even allowing for colloquial speech patterns or accents. I also noticed several scenes that just didn't make logistical sense. For example, in one scene, Ainsley serves the same slice of pie twice. At the end of the book, she falls asleep in her living room with the lights on, but when she wakes up, it's apparently dark, which isn't mentioned until later when she turns the lights back on. This is part of a fight scene with the bad guy, and there's just a lot of spatial relationship things that don't make sense in this scene. There were also a few others and a few conversations where it was really hard to tell who was speaking, even though there were only 2 people in the room. So I'd have to go back and give that scene a reread to figure out what was going on. Second, and more importantly, there are several changes from the book to the movie. Of course, this always happens in any adaptation. I thought most of the changes were kind of weird, like changing the name of Ainsley's brother and making him her younger sibling in the movie when he's the older sibling in the book. But some of them were really major, like some tweaks to Ainsley's backstory and the cause of death for the victim. I'm going to mention a few specifics here, so if you don't want minor spoilers for the movies or the book, skip ahead to the next chapter marker. In the book, Ainsley teaches a modern lit class at the local university. In the movies, she's a criminology professor, so already much more competent and respected than in the book, at least in terms of mystery solving. This also means that it makes a lot more sense when her students ask to join the book club that isn't really a book club, and it makes her traumatic backstory a little bit more believable. I'm not saying that getting mugged, which is her big secret in the book, isn't traumatic, but does it justify your brother and two friends flying in from the other side of the country or moving thousands of miles away? I just feel like the movie version made a lot more sense. In the book, the cause of death is blunt force trauma to the head. At first, they think this is from a wine bottle found at the scene, but the bottle doesn't really match the head wound. In fact, I don't think there's even a mention of the bottle having any kind of blood or DNA or anything on it. And in fact, the actual murder weapon was a tree. Yet there's no mention in the coroner's report of any kind of debris, dirt, etc., found in the wound where there should be, considering how badly the skull was damaged according to Ainsley's description. This is why in the movie, the head wound was secondary to the actual cause of death, which was stabbing. And last, it's not until the epilogue that we get any hint of motive, means, or opportunity for the killer. Ainsley just info dumps his whole backstory. The real mystery is how she got that information in the first place. Yes, it's the guy she suspected all along, but it's also the guy she didn't really investigate and had no proof or evidence against. She asked a casual question about him once at the very beginning of the book, and that was it. I also have beef with how he tried to cover up the crime in the book, since framing the person he did would only make it harder to reach his ultimate goal and jeopardize his plan to buy the winery in the first place, which is what he wanted to do. He then apparently spends the rest of the book running around like a chicken with its head cut off, following Ainsley and threatening her with anonymous notes at every opportunity, which really just complicates things for him. If he had left her alone, he never would have been caught. All in all, I just didn't think the book was a very good mystery, and Candace Havens should maybe stick to her steamy romance novels, since apparently they're working for her. It wasn't awful. I gave it 3 stars in the Kobo store, but I really had a bone to pick with some of those errors and won't be continuing the book series as a result. The first 2 books are free for Kindle. The first book is free on Kobo, and the rest range in price from $1.99 to $15.99 American. Okay, so it's been a couple of days, and I've gotten down to the front where I want to join under the arm at this point. I want to go a little bit further on the neckline, and then I have started the back. Somehow I twisted the front of this. I'm not sure how that happened, but it's fine. I can fix it when I join the fronts and take this cable out. I'm using my Leica interchangeable circulars, so I can just take care of that in a little bit. It's not a big deal. But this is how much of the blue yarn I have left. I'm just knitting directly off of the old sweater. So I have the body of the sweater left. But I still need more for the back. So I am definitely going to run out of yarn. I'm not sure how much extra yarn I'm going to need, but I have a feeling I'm going to have to go out and get an extra skein because the little bits and pieces that I have in that project are just not going to be enough. But we'll see how it goes. Okay, it's early and I need to talk fast because I'm almost out of battery on this camera. So it's a few days later. I have joined at the bottom and I'm working on the body. I wasn't sure I had added enough stitches for the bust, but it looks like I did, so we're good there. This is actually a great illustration of why I don't use pre-made patterns, because you can see how narrow the shoulders are compared to the bust line. I have to adjust for that every time, and that can really throw off a pattern. This is also why I tend to knit things from top down, because it's a lot easier to make that adjustment for me. This is slaying funny because I'm using interchangeable needles, and I just added an extra cable for length in here, so I have one of those like thick joining pieces in here somewhere. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the knitting in a minute, but so far it is coming out really well, and the sleeve openings in the v-neck I left intentionally oversized because I'm going to go back in with that dark blue ribbing, and also because I'm still trying to conserve this yarn as much as I can. I still have this much left on the original, which I think is promising, and then I've got another little ball over there that I can tap into, that I will definitely have to tap into to finish it up. But so far, it is looking good. Now that we've looked at the source material, let's take a look at the movies. There are 2 so far, with a 3rd currently in production. They're produced by GAC and star Candace Cameron Bure, with Robin Doon, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, playing her brother, and Aaron Ashmore as her love interest. So if you're familiar with GAC or Hallmark, there are plenty of familiar faces. The movies are available on GAC, but I found them here on YouTube. A Case for the Winemaker is a pretty good mystery, especially compared to the book. There's another red herring suspect, and they also added a few clues to the actual killers so that it makes more sense rather than just having him pop up out of nowhere at the end. It definitely feels like a GAC Hallmark style mystery. However, I did enjoy the overall journey. Like I said, Ainsley is generally more competent when it comes to crime solving in the movies, and by the end of the first one, she's made a police consultant, which neatly sidesteps any ethics of her brother sharing information or the questionable tactics Ainsley took in the books to get her hands on police and coroner's reports. The second movie, A Case for the Yarn Maker, has a better story, in my opinion. I might be a little biased, though it also had some factual knitting-related errors that drove me bonkers. Having not read that book, I can't confirm that it's from the source material or if there was just no one on set who actually knits that could correct them. This story revolves around the murder of a knitting celebrity, though I don't know anyone in the hand knitting community with Martha Stewart levels of fame and fortune. If only. This movie made me wonder if Candace Havens has some kind of a vendetta against the yarn community, since every single character who knits or crochets or is involved with yarn comes off as grumpy and abrasive at best. I'm all for subverting tropes, but when it's every single character, it starts to get annoying, especially since I'm a knitter. It appeared that the actors who knit on screen actually did know how to knit, even if they weren't capital K knitters. However, the entire case hinged on the fact that the victim, a knitting purist, was using a circular needle instead of her beloved double points to knit a flat project. It appeared to be a shawl. I also had to laugh because at one point, one character talks about cable needles as if you would knit an entire sweater with those and nothing else. Good luck with that. That frustration aside, however, I thought that the twists in this one were more believable while still being unexpected, and I thought that the characters had a little bit more depth. Than in Case for the Winemaker. Overall, the series so far has been enjoyable, and I do plan to continue it, though it's mostly just average, in my opinion. I'll let you know if that changes. Okay, so I just ordered the skein of yarn for that vest, and then I tried it on. So I think it might actually be long enough now that I could just add the ribbing and it would be fine, but I'm not going to say no to a couple of extra inches. And the frustrating thing is, even before I tried it on, I knew that I only needed like half a skein. I really didn't need that much extra yarn to make this vest work, but having a whole skein feels a lot better. So I ordered the yarn, and it's fine. I used a gift certificate, so I only had to pay for shipping. And I'm getting 3 skeins of yarn. I ordered a couple of extra colors too, which I will show you here in a minute. But I have the vest on hold until the new yarn comes in. I think I'm just going to add like 2 inches to it and then do the ribbing, because I accidentally made, well, I intentionally made the arm size bigger than usual, but I made them bigger than I intended to. And I think that's what ended up saving me on the yarn and helping out a lot with length. Also the fact that this is a pullover and not a vest, so it helps with like the fabric tension and everything. So that is set and ready to go. I just have to wait for the yarn to get here. The series that has gotten me really excited the past several weeks is Harry Wild. This is an Irish TV show produced by Acorn, so it's on their app, but I've been watching it via my library and Hoopla. This means I can only get 10 episodes a month maximum, so it's slow going. There are currently 4 seasons, and as of July of this year, it has been renewed for season 5. However, only 3 seasons are on Hoopla, at least through my library. Yours might have different availability. This stars Jane Seymour as Harriet Harry Wild, a retired literature professor living in Dublin. She's all set for a nice quiet retirement of reading and trying to write a novel when fate intervenes and she gets mugged on the street. In a surprise twist, her mugger ends up helping her solve a murder. If a straight cozy romance is a marshmallow, then this series definitely has a few nuts thrown in, in both senses of the word. It's a little bit grittier than a true cozy, but it still has the thematic elements: literature, friendship, romance, crossed with sarcasm, swearing, and a concerning amount of wine. By the end of season 1, Harry and Fergus have set up their own detective agency, and Harry's actual detective son is convinced that his mother is trying to ruin his life, or at least his career. While that might not be her intention, she really does love her son, even if she's not great at showing it. She is absolutely sitting back with a bucket of popcorn and a glass of wine, just watching the chaos and the drama. I really can't wait to see what the rest of this series has in store. Unfortunately, because this is on the more intensive, because this is a little bit more on the intensive mystery side of things, I can't give you a terribly good summary of the series overall. But just know that it is really good, and there doesn't seem to be much of an overarching story, at least through season 1. It's very episodic, but it's incredibly enjoyable. Okay, so what worked and what didn't on this project? Overall, I am happy with the result. I may have overestimated a little bit on the arm side, did make them a little bit too big, but I'm not concerned about it because that means that I got the length that I wanted out of the yarn that I had. The second ball of yarn that I ordered was not a match. When I was looking online, there were 2 colors that were really close to what I had. One of them looked like it was too gray, one of them looked like it was too green. I ended up going with the one that was a little bit more gray, and it's just totally the wrong color. But I also don't think that the other one was right either because of those green undertones. So either the yarn that I had originally has been discontinued, or the dye recipe has changed, because this was a bigger difference than just a dye lot change, I think. But again, the yarn in my stash is 15 years old, so it's very possible that there's been some kind of a change at Barocco over the last 15 years. So I ended up using just the recycled stash yarn, and I will use the new yarn for something else. But there was no amount of color blocking or alternating skeins that was going to make that blend in. There was just no way. I have not worn this out in the wild yet because it has been way too hot here in Washington lately. It's supposed to be about 90 degrees today, So I wore it for the intro of this video, absolutely melted while I was wearing it, and it'll get worn at some point this fall once it cools off a little bit. Hopefully this is our hot week for the year, and it will go back to our traditional Western Washington weather here in the next few days. But that's it for this project, and I will go back to the other Sheena to wrap things up for this video. So that is it for me this time around. Again, I do not have a regular upload schedule for this channel, and I'm going easy on myself right now with my video creation because of my mental health. But if you enjoy what I'm doing here, please interact with the video, share it. It lets me know that I'm doing something you guys enjoy and helps me find more viewers. So until next time, I hope you have a great day. Ciao.